I review digital maps for a living, so I know roads don't appear by accident, especially not roads named after my dead brother. The ticket came in at 8:42 on a Tuesday, while I was eating cold toast over my keyboard and pretending I hadn't slept badly again. The subject line was boring enough that I almost skipped it. Field verification required. Eli V. Street. Spam, I thought. Then a cruel joke. Then one of those small disagreements that happen when county parcel data and a private mapping company stop trusting each other. Except the road was in Mercy P, my hometown, and Eli V was my brother. He disappeared in 2003, 6 years old. Blue popsicle in his right hand, standing outside B's Market while I went around the side of the building to talk to some kids I wanted to impress. I was 12. He was supposed to wait 5 minutes. That was the number I gave the police. 5 minutes. It became the number everyone handed back to me. You were only gone 5 minutes. A lot can happen in 5 minutes. You were a child too. People say things like that because they need tragedy to have edges. A beginning, a middle, an end. 5 minutes is small enough to hold in your mouth. It sounds like an accident. I opened the ticket. Eli V. Street appeared on 3 independent sources: County GIS, USPS address verification, and 1 commercial satellite layer. According to the metadata, it was a residential access road running north off Junie B Road, just past the old subdivision line. The satellite image showed trees. The county layer showed 12 lots. USPS listed 4 active addresses. A note from another contractor read, "Local government confirms road exists. Requires field validation." I was still staring when the navigation preview loaded, and a woman's pleasant artificial voice came through my laptop. In 200 feet, turn left onto Eli V. I hit mute hard enough to make my coffee jump. I hadn't been back to Mercy P in 14 years. Not for my mother's surgery, not for the reunion, not when they found a child's jacket near the old quarry and asked the families to submit fresh DNA. I mailed mine from 3 states away and threw up in the post office bathroom afterward. I told my manager I would verify the road in person. She said fine, if I wrapped it up by Friday. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Just a weird data thing," I said. That was always how Mercy P started, as a weird thing. A small wrongness you could explain, as long as you didn't look at it straight on. The drive was 4 hours. Interstate, then county highway, then the 2-lane road that used to make me carsick because Eli would lean across my lap to count cows out my window. He always cheated. Brown one, white one. That one's 2. It has spots. That's not how counting works. It's how mine works. At the town line that my rental's GPS chimed and recalculated, though I hadn't missed a turn. The screen flashed "Welcome to Mercy P," and beneath it, for half a second, something else appeared. I only caught the first word. Remember. Then it was gone. I pulled into the gas station by the old grain elevator. They'd painted the elevator white since I left, and the paint was already peeling, gray showing through like bone. A new coffee kiosk advertised oat milk, which felt obscene somehow, like a vape shop in a cemetery. The cashier had silver hair and a Mercy P Cardinals sweatshirt. She looked at me, then looked again. People there recognized me by subtraction, not my face, not at first. The missing boy around it. "You're Helen V's girl," she said. I hadn't heard anyone use my mother's name in years. "Mara," I said. Recognition crossed her face, then pity, then caution, in that order. "Back for the house?" "Work." I bought a bottle of water I didn't want. When the receipt printed, she folded it before handing it to me like it carried something indecent. I looked away. 2 Junie B Road. Corner of Junie B and Eli V. "This isn't right," I said. The cashier glanced toward the window. Receipts get funny sometimes. Eli V Street doesn't exist. She smiled, not unkindly, not cruelly either, like a woman who had already survived this conversation with other people. Roads don't need you to believe in them. I left the water on the counter. The afternoon had gone dim in that Midwestern way that feels more like a mood than weather. Clouds sat low over the soybean fields. I drove toward the north edge of town. Mercy P was smaller than I remembered, but grief does that. As a child, your town is the world. As an adult, you come back and find 3 stoplights, a church sign, a dairy queue, and a field where somebody's dog died. The old streets were still there. Mercer A, Pine S Road, Quarry C. Then I saw the first child's name, Hannah G. Lane. White letters, green sign. Hannah G. disappeared when I was 8. Everyone knew the story because her mother had been baking a birthday cake and sent her outside for being underfoot. 10 minutes. My mother used to drive past their house with both hands locked on the wheel. Don't stare, she told me once. But Eli stared. Eli always stared. Where'd she go? He asked. My mother said, somewhere we can't help her. I didn't understand how strange that answer was until much later. Then came Caleb S. Caleb N. Gone from a bus stop in '96. Lily M. C. 5 years old. Last seen in her grandmother's yard. Thomas O. Way. Missing from the fall festival. I pulled over before Junie B. Road and searched each name on the county map. All active. Residential, rural access, publicly maintained. The records claimed Hannah G. Lane had been established in 1987. Hannah disappeared in 1995. I went to the sheriff's office because some childish part of me still believed buildings with flags in front had to tell you the truth. The sheriff wasn't the one from my childhood. That man had died of pancreatic cancer. This one was younger than I expected, broad-shouldered, tired-eyed. With a wedding ring he kept turning with his thumb. His nameplate read DM. You're Mara V, he said before I could introduce myself. Everyone keeps doing that. You look like your mother. I'm sorry to hear it. Something almost like a smile crossed his face, then vanished. I showed him my badge, the ticket, the data. I need to verify whether Eli V Street physically exists, I said, and why it's named that. He leaned back. On the wall behind him hung a framed civic map of Mercy P, laminated and sun-faded. The kind in every municipal building. I scanned it before I could stop myself. There it was. A thin gray line branching north off Junie B Road. Eli V Street. I want that map, I said. No. You don't even know what I do with it. I know what people do with maps. The sentence sat between us. My brother disappeared 23 years ago, I said. I know. Then why is there a road named after him? He looked down at his desk. Under the glass blotter was a child's drawing. Yellow sun, stick figures, a dog too big for the house beside it. In the corner, in careful letters, someone had written, Ben. Don't go there after dark, he said. Official recommendation? No. Then what? He looked at me. A lesson this town learned badly. I almost laughed. You people rehearse this? If you see something you remember, don't stop for it. That's your advice? No, he said. That's what I failed to do. He slid a business card across the desk. His number was handwritten on the back. If the road starts using your voice, he said, call me. I left without the card. Then I came back for it 30 seconds later. The planning office shared a brick building with the library and smelled like toner and old carpet. I told the clerk I was there about Eli V Street. From the back room, someone dropped a mug. A minute later, June T came out. I hadn't seen June since we were 17, when she told me at a graduation party that leaving Mercy P wouldn't fix what was wrong with me. She'd aged the way some people do. The same face kept under time, like a room that never changes its wallpaper. Sharp cheekbones, thin mouth, eyes that made you feel she'd already corrected your version of events in her head. Mara. June. Heard you were in town. I got here 2 hours ago. Small town. Apparently getting bigger. Her eyes flicked to the clerk. Come back. Her office had no photographs, just binders, file cabinets, zoning maps, and a dead plant on the windowsill. I shut the door. You know why I'm here, I said. Eli's Road. My stomach turned at how easily she said it. You say it like it's normal. Nobody said normal. I need the development records. You won't find any. I have county authorization. Mara. The way she said my name made me hate her again. Not because it was cruel, because it was tired. She took a key ring from her drawer. You remember the maps we used to draw on? She asked. No. At B's, behind the soda machines. Tommy B stole county maps from his dad's office. We drew fake roads on them. The room seemed to tilt. I remember the soda machines, the alley behind B's where the pavement was always sticky. June at 12, chewing grape gum, bored by everything. I did not remember maps. She watched me not remember. Convenient, she said. Don't. You came here wanting someone else to be guilty. My brother disappeared. I know. You think I forgot that? No, June said. I think you remembered it the way you could live with. I almost left then. I wish I had. Instead, I followed her through a locked archive to a cabinet labeled Historic Plats / Decommissioned Routes. She set a flat cardboard box on the table. Inside were folded maps. Some official, some photocopied. Some drawn by children. The one she handed me had been creased soft as cloth, its edges furred from handling. Across the top in blue marker was a title in handwriting I knew before I understood why. Go Somewhere Else game. It was Mercy P, 2003, but in the blank spaces around the town, children had drawn roads in crayon and pen and pencil. Loops, dead ends, lines cutting straight through fields and houses. Every road had a name. Not street names. People. Mrs. H, Coach R, Caleb's dog, Stupid T, Mom when she yells, and there, north of Junie B Road, in my 12-year-old block letters, Eli V. I touched the paper. Something rose from it. Blue raspberry, dust, hot pavement. My mouth flooded like I was going to be sick. June looked away first. We all played, she said. I shook my head. You wrote people down when you wanted them somewhere else, she said. Not dead, not hurt, just away. I wanted to ask who she had written. I didn't need to. Behind her desk through the window, Junie B Road turned sharply where, according to every old map I had ever trusted, it should have kept going straight. I folded the map with shaking hands. You knew, I said. I suspected. You all did. Mara, every town has missing children. Not every town names streets after them. She flinched. Good. Then she said very softly, Eli's road doesn't end where he disappeared. I stopped. It ends where he was trying to go. B's Market was still there, though it hadn't been B's in years. Mercy F&F now. Lottery sign in the window. firewood by the door. The soda machines were gone. The alley wasn't. I parked badly and stood on the cracked sidewalk where I'd left him. The world hadn't marked the place. Some part of me had always expected it to. I closed my eyes, and his voice came back so clearly I turned around. If I wait, can I pick the cereal? He'd been wearing the green dinosaur shirt with the hole near the collar from where he chewed it when he was nervous. Blue mouth from the popsicle. One front tooth missing, tongue working the gap. I was embarrassed by him. That's the ugliest true thing about my life, and for years I dressed it in softer words. I was distracted. I was young. I wanted 5 minutes. No. I was embarrassed by how openly he loved me, the way he followed me, the way he thought I was the safest person in the world, when I was mean, frightened girl desperate to be chosen by anyone else. The older kids had been by the alley, June among them, a silver CD player playing something tinny. Someone laughed when they saw Eli holding the hem of my shirt. "You brought your shadow again," June said. I heard the rest of it now. Not like memory usually comes, blurred and merciful. Sharp. I told Eli to wait. He asked about the cereal. I said yes. He smiled. Then June held out the map. "Write him down. Give him his own road." I remembered laughing. I remember taking the marker. I remember Eli trying to see. "Is that my road?" "Yeah." "Can it go to our house?" "Sure, whatever." Then I wrote his name. Not because I believed in anything, because for one clean, poisonous second, I wanted to know what it felt like to walk somewhere he couldn't follow. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Where are you?" Mercer asked. "Bees." "Leave." I remembered. "Then leave faster." "What is Eli V Street?" Static crackled between us. "A child's road," he said. "What does that mean?" "It means he's still trying to get somewhere." The sky had gone dark without my noticing. In the dark glass of the storefront, behind my own reflection, a small boy stood by the ice freezer. Blue mouth, dinosaur shirt, looking at the alley. Not at me. I turned. No one. "Mara," Mercer said. His voice was lower now. "If you go there, the road will give you what you deserve. That's not the same as the truth." The line dropped. My GPS chimed. Eli V Street, 12 minutes. I don't remember deciding to go. That sounds like an excuse, and maybe it is. But there are moments when guilt becomes a steering wheel. You can take your hands off it. It turns anyway. Junie B Road ran north past the last of the new houses with their identical porches, then narrowed between fields, then trees. No streetlights, no mailboxes, just weed-choked ditches and the gray suggestion of forest beyond. At 6:03 the GPS said, "In 400 feet, turn left onto Eli V." "Don't say his name," I whispered. "In 200 feet, turn left onto Eli V." There was no road. Then there was. Not appearing, not materializing through fog, just suddenly undeniable. As if my eyes had been refusing it and finally gave up. A narrow paved lane opened between two walls of trees. The sign at the corner looked new. Rainwater clung to it, though it hadn't rained. Eli V Street. Below it hung a smaller yellow sign I've never seen on any road anywhere. No outlet unless remembered. I turned in. The blacktop was smooth and new. My headlights washed over ditch grass. The GPS went silent. My phone lost service. Then the smell came through the vents. Blue raspberry. The road curved and the trees fell away. Bees Market stood ahead of me, lit by late afternoon sun that didn't reach my car. The old red sign was back, one fluorescent tube flickering. The soda machines leaned against the wall. A small boy sat on the curb, kicking his heels. He didn't look up. His popsicle dripped blue onto the concrete, drop after drop, but instead of running to the gutter, the stain stretched out along the road ahead of me, a thin blue line leading on. I almost opened the door. The boy lifted his head. It wasn't Eli. Not exactly. It was my memory of him, which was worse. Too bright, too clear. 6 years old forever. Made of the pieces my guilt had polished until they shone. His mouth moved, and through the closed window I heard him. "If I wait, can I pick the cereal?" I drove. The market vanished behind me, and the road became a school hallway. My tires rolled soundlessly over beige tile. Lockers ran down both sides. My headlights made no sense there, but they still cut forward, trembling over classroom doors and bulletin boards. Every drawing on the walls was a road. Some went into houses, some into lakes, some into open mouths. None reached anything. They were the careful, patient work of children who kept getting the way home wrong and kept trying anyway. At the far end, Eli stood with his backpack on, too big for him. Red straps, a dinosaur clipped to the zipper. He was checking the classroom doors. One, then the next, then the next. The way you search a building for someone who was supposed to be there. He had walked those doors before. I understood that the way you understand things in dreams, completely and all at once. He had searched for me in places I had never been, because those were the only places he knew how to imagine. "Eli?" I said. He turned, his face opened with relief. Not fear, relief. He started toward the car, not running, just walking, sure of me now. I put my foot down. Because if he reached the door, I would open it. And if I opened it, I would never leave. For a few seconds, the distance between us refused to close, no matter how fast I went. That was the most frightening thing yet. Not that he was chasing me, that he couldn't catch up. Then the hallway snapped back into road. I was crying too hard to see. The next stretch was my mother's car. Not visually, not entirely. The road stayed under my tires, but the air thickened into the inside of her old blue Ford. Stale coffee, wintergreen gum, the radio giving the forecast from the day he went. She sat ahead of me and, to the left, hands at 10 and 2. The ring already gone from her finger because she'd pawned it that year. His booster seat was behind her, empty. Beside it sat me, 12 years old, looking out the window with a face like a drawn blind. "You were gone 5 minutes," my mother said. "Stop," I whispered. "You were gone 5 minutes." The 12-year-old turned her head and looked back at me with dry eyes. She wasn't haunted yet. She wasn't sorry yet. She was just a girl who had gotten what she asked for and hadn't understood the price. "He was always there," she said. Reasonable, almost bored. I just wanted one place he wasn't. I put the car halfway into the trees rather than hear another word. Branches screamed down both sides. When the road straightened again, I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel. And I understood then that the cruelest thing on this road wasn't going to be my mother, or the dark, or whatever waited at the end. It was going to be myself, telling the truth, at 12. Then came my bedroom. The road did not become a house. It went into one. My headlights crossed pink carpet I hadn't thought about in 20 years. Posters, a white dresser, a bead curtain in the doorway, my unmade bed. The car idled in the middle of the room. When I cut the engine, the silence was enormous. On the floor sat Eli, my old road map spread in front of him, the blue marker in his hand. He was trying to draw, tongue poking through the gap in his teeth. "Eli?" I said. He looked up. This time he wasn't polished by memory. His hair was messy the way it really had been. His nose was running. There was dirt on one knee and dried popsicle sticky on his hand. He looked tired. Not dead, not monstrous. Just tired the way a child looks when he has been waiting too long and still believes the grown-up is coming. "Mara?" he said. I opened the door. The air smelled like my childhood. Dust, strawberry shampoo, crayons, sun-warmed plastic. He smiled. I had forgotten the exact shape of his smile. That was one more thing I had done to him without noticing. "You found my road," he said. I got out. My legs almost didn't hold. "I'm sorry." His smile faded, not from anger. Children don't know what to do with an apology that big. "You said it could go home," he said. "I know." I made it go to B's first. The room flickered. For a second the carpet was pavement, the dresser a soda machine. "Because that's where you left me." Then to school. Another flicker. Lockers. Fluorescent hum. "I thought maybe you went there." He smoothed the map with his small hand. "But I kept getting lost." I went down on one knee in front of him. "I tried to remember the way," he said. "I did. The store and the cereal and your room. How you smelled like that orange gum you weren't allowed to chew. Your shoes." A broken sound came out of me. He smiled a little. "They had silver stars. They were stupid shoes. I liked them." Then he looked back at the map. I waited. "I know." "No," he said gently. "I waited all of them." I won't try to describe what happened in me then. It wasn't crying. Crying is something the body can do and survive. This was older. Something that had been frozen since I was 12 cracked all the way through, and through the crack I saw him, waiting outside B's as the sun moved, waiting through the police lights, waiting while our mother screamed his name hoarse, waiting while rain washed the blue from the curb, waiting while flyers faded, waiting while I grew taller, learned to drive, kissed boys who didn't know his name, told people I was an only child because it was easier than watching their faces change. He had waited with the kind of patience only a child has when someone they love has promised to come back. "You look old," he said. I laughed and sobbed at once. "I know." "Are you still mad?" "No, I was stupid then." "You wrote me on the map." I couldn't answer. He looked at the paper, then at me. "I thought it was a present." That was the one that did it. Not an accusation, not anger. A little boy who thought his sister had given him a road. His cold fingers found my wrist. "Don't cry," he said. "Why?" His eyes moved to the doorway. The bead curtain was gone. Beyond it wasn't the hallway of our old house. It was a road, new, unpaved, pale dirt under a sky with no color in it. At the end of it stood my mother. She looked younger than when she died and older than when I left, both at once. Her arms hung at her sides. In one hand she held a folded map. Behind her, street signs leaned at crooked angles. Hannah G., Caleb, Lily Mae, Thomas, Ben M. Names I knew, names I didn't. My mother did not move. She only unfolded the map. Even from across the room, I knew her handwriting. Mara V. Not in crayon, in pen. Dark, deliberate, an adult hand. "When?" I asked. Eli's fingers tightened around my wrist. "The night after I went." The room went cold. She said she only meant 5 minutes too. For the first time since she died, I understood the way my mother had watched me grow up. Not without love. Not with love either. With fear. She had wanted me gone for 1 second, long enough not to look at what I had done, long enough to imagine a house where she had lost only one child, and not the wrong one. The town had listened to her too, but Eli's road came first, drawn earlier by a girl who didn't believe in it. My brother, who thought it was a gift, had walked out onto the road that might have taken me, and he had been trying to find his way back to me ever since. "You have to go," he said. "I'm not leaving you again." He frowned like I was being difficult about bedtime. "You didn't leave me all the way." "Yes, I did." "No," he said. "You remembered me." "I stopped saying your name." "But you didn't forget it." Some mercies hurt worse than punishment. He pushed the folded map onto my hands. "Take it." "What is it?" "My road." In the doorway, my mother took one step forward. The house shuddered. Eli leaned close and whispered, "Keep it folded, and it can't find the end." "Eli, don't let it make a street out of you." Then he ran past me. Not to me. Past me. Toward our mother. For one insane second, I thought he meant to hug her. Then he threw both arms around her waist and held on the way he used to hold on to me when he was tired. Stubborn, sticky-handed, impossible. "Go," he shouted. My mother made a sound. It wasn't a monster's sound. That would have been easier. It was grief turned inside out. The walls cracked, the bead curtain flashed in and out of being. Every poster in the room became a map. I ran for the car. When I started it, I looked back. Eli was still holding her. He looked at me over his shoulder, and now he was crying. Really crying. Scared and brave and far too small. I had never let myself imagine him crying. In my memory, he had always been frozen before the fear. "Mara?" he called. I rolled the window down. "What?" He smiled through it. "I picked the cereal." Then the room collapsed onto road. I drove. I don't know for how long. The road unspooled under me in pieces of other people's children. A kitchen floor, a bus seat, a backyard going dark, a small hand letting go. At one point, I passed Mercer standing beside a sign that read Ben M. Way. He didn't wave. He took off his hat and held it to his chest as I went by. Then the trees came back. Then Junie B. Road. Then my phone found service and there was a normal night sky over me, indifferent and full of stars. I pulled over and was sick. Into the ditch. The folded map was on the passenger seat. It was warm. I didn't stop at a motel. I drove out of Mercy P and kept going until the sun came up. At a rest stop 2 counties over, I opened the map. Most of the roads had faded. Not gone. Faded. Like pencil under an eraser. Eli V Street was still there. Thinner now. At its end, in a shaky child's hand, someone had drawn a small square house. Inside it were 2 stick figures side by side. One tall, one small. The small one had blue around the mouth. The tall one wore shoes with silver stars. I laughed until people stared. Then I cried until they stopped. When I got home, I filed Eli V Street as invalid. The system rejected the edit. Road verified by local authority. I tried to delete the ticket. The screen went white. When it came back, a new field had appeared. Future extension, Mara V Road. Status, pending. I called Mercer. Disconnected. I called June. No answer. I check the county maps sometimes. Eli V Street is gone now. Not unlisted. Gone. The parcel lines have closed over it like water. Satellite shows only trees. But there is a new road on the north side of Mercy P. I found the photo in the database one night. The green paint on the sign still looked wet, though the records say it has been there since the year I was born. Mara V Road. I have never driven it. I don't need to. Some mornings my navigation app suggests it before I type anything in. Some nights, when I unfold the map just enough to check that Eli's Road is still closed, I see the pencil line of mine stretching a little farther. It does not lead to Mercy P. Not anymore. Last week it turned toward my apartment. I keep the map folded. I keep saying his name. No outlet, unless remembered. Sistine was the love of my life. She was funny, bright, and had a way of cutting through BS that would knock you on your butt. She would crochet a scarf as easily as she could recite a monologue from The Office, and could fix a flat tire, change your oil, and call you an idiot for not knowing how to do these things yourself in one fluid motion. I loved the way she snort-laughed, the way she rested her head on my shoulder when we hugged, the way she strutted in her favorite heels or her boot-cut jeans for my hoodies. I miss her every day. It happened on the 4th of July, or maybe Memorial Day. I just remember the boisterous red, white, and blue wreath on our front door, and that the ER was packed when I brought her in. Sistine was 32 weeks pregnant. She had endometriosis, so the pregnancy was already high risk. When she said she wasn't feeling well one morning, I insisted she see a doctor. She put up a bit of a fight. She did that a lot. She wouldn't do anything she didn't think of first, but she relented when her pain worsened. That said, she wouldn't take an ambulance. I loaded her into my car and drove. "How are you feeling, babe?" I asked. Sistine groaned. "Dee, for Christ's sake, I'm fine." "Is the pain getting any worse?" I began. "On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you—" She interrupted. "Dakota, I love you, but if you keep talking, you will lose the ability to ever father a child again." I did as I was told and turned my attention back to the road. I peeked at the rear view, catching a glimpse of the car seat in the back. I hoped we wouldn't have to use it just yet. When we arrived, they put us in an exam room, gave us some paperwork, and told us someone would be with us shortly. I stopped checking the time after 2 hours. Despite the cacophony of drunks with newly missing fingers outside, Sistine and I remained pretty much silent. Every so often, she would tell me I was breathing too loudly, or that the hospital smells were making her nauseous, or that she would have brought her crochet with her if she'd known she would be waiting so long. Occasionally, it was just an exasperated sigh or an eye roll. You'd think for someone who feigned nonchalance so much, she'd be better at it. Eventually, a team came in to take a look at her. They took vitals and asked questions. Sistine asked what took so long while fiddling with her red yam ring, enough to make it fray. She leaned back to look at me through the people examining her. "Dee," she asked, reaching her hand out to me. "Can you get me some water?" "Sure thing, babe." I took her hand, squeezed it, and shuffled into the hallway. I wandered for a little while before finding a couple vending machines. As I retrieved a water bottle from the compartment on the side, there was a commotion. Codes called, yelling, the squeaking wheels of gurneys and crash carts. I glanced behind me, only to see Sistine being wheeled away. My feet pounded against the linoleum floor as I ran after her, only to be stopped by an orderly. "Sir," they put their hands on my chest to prevent me from going further. "Sir, you can't go back there." "Where are you taking Sistine?" I craned my neck to locate her, but she'd disappeared around a corner. The orderly spouted a stream of jargon, rambling on about D-cells and hemorrhaging. It all boiled down to the woman I love and our child were in peril, and I was powerless. They brought me to the waiting room and sat me down in the corner between a screaming baby and a television playing some soap opera. All I could do was close my eyes and lean my head back. Sistine and I met a little over a year ago. She helped me find charcoal pencils at a craft store, in exchange for my number. Within weeks, she had a toothbrush and a set of crochet hooks at my place. And I had half a sketchbook's worth of drawings of her. When she did properly move in, suddenly my entire apartment was covered in granny squares, colorful paint and sip canvases, and half-empty bottles of Mod Podge and glitter glue. I complained about it then, but I would give anything to live in that mess again. It was maybe a month in that I told her I loved her. We were on a commercial break during a rerun of Scrubs. She just smiled, shrugged, and said that she figured as much, while fidgeting with the tassel on the throw pillow beside her. Around the time of our 6-month anniversary, Sistine slipped the news of her pregnancy between passing the salt and asking if it was butter or margarine in the potatoes. She kept her eyes on the plate, but she couldn't hide her beet red face or raw cuticles. And she certainly couldn't hide the tears streaking her face when she finally broke. "Please don't run," she begged, as I came around the table to comfort her. "Please don't leave me." I went over to her big pile of yarn and cut a few inches of her favorite, a crochet thread of variegated red, and tied it around her finger. "Call it an engagement ring," I said, holding her hand in mine. Wiping the tears from her eyes, Sistine whispered, "I always knew you were cheap." "I love you." I wrapped my arms around her and she melted into my chest. "Wait," Sistine backed up. She cut another piece of the red yarn and tied it around my finger. "Here, so no one goes getting any ideas." I held up my hand to admire the ring, but I was looking at her. Perfect. The weight was excruciating. I counted the ceiling tiles, paced enough to leave a dent in the carpet, and bummed smokes off anyone I could. After the 3rd hour, I finally approached the front desk. "Excuse me?" I sighed. "Can you give me an update on my girlfriend? I still haven't heard anything." "Sure thing, honey." The older nurse gave me a warm smile and turned to her computer monitor. "What's your girlfriend's name, sweetheart?" I gave her Sistine's name. She cocked her head. "I'm sorry, my love. I don't see her in our system." "What?" I asked. "What does that mean? Is she out of surgery, or is she..." "No, her name isn't even in our system." She put her hand on mine. "I'll tell you what, baby. Have a seat. I'll call you up to the surgical floor and see if she's up there. If maybe she just got missed. It can happen." I returned to my seat and watched her make the call. I watched her speak to the person on the other end and furrow her brow. I watched her stumble over her words and nod before hanging up. I watched her repeat the process several more times. Sistine wasn't in the operating room. She wasn't in recovery. She wasn't getting prepped. She wasn't even in the morgue. She was just gone. Sistine couldn't just be gone. It's not possible. I stumbled out of the hospital waiting room like I had a bullet in my gut, and my ears rang accordingly. I slid into the driver's seat of my car and buried my head in my hands. When I was able to compose myself enough to drive, something caught my eye. My air freshener. It was a little black pine tree dangling from my wiper switch. Sistine never liked black ice. She said it was a guy scent, and that it didn't smell like anything. When I told her that I didn't care for the vanilla or cherry or peach ginger spritz scents that she used, she told me that she'd meet me in the middle. She bought me leather, bourbon, and fresh shave. They were still guy scents, but they smelled like something. I haven't used black ice in over a year, and I took the air fresheners out of my car altogether when they started making Sistine nauseous. But there it was, black ice. I figured I must have left it in there without realizing it. Maybe I put it back when Sistine wasn't with me. That sounds like something I might do. As I drove home, I checked my side mirror to see someone riding my tail. People drive crazy here. I looked into my rear view to get a look at this guy, but instead, I saw my empty back seat. I slammed on my brakes, making the guy almost hit me. He laid on his horn as I pulled over and climbed into the back seat. It was empty, just a few fast food wrappers and an ice scraper. My hands were grease-stained for days after installing that car seat. It couldn't have just... I got back into the driver's seat and sped all the way home. Racing to my apartment, I could already see the plain front door, and as I entered, I fell to the floor. The walls were bare of paint by numbers and diamond arts, and the couch held nothing more than its gray cushions. My sketchbooks were blank. My bedroom was devoid of color, only a black comforter and navy blue sheets. My closet didn't have a speck of glitter or lace in sight. The worst of it was the nursery, or what was the nursery. Sistine and I spent weeks rolling the walls with soft blue paint and dabbing sponges of white across the ceiling. We spent hours researching cribs and changing tables and rocking chairs. We'd had dang near knockdown, drag-out fights about what should be close to the window and what should be close to the door. Now it was empty. It was the home office it used to be. A desk, a chair, a laptop. I could barely keep myself erect. I slammed my back against the far wall and slid down to the floor. I stared at the yarn ring on my finger. Hot tears crawled down my cheeks. I hadn't cried like that since I was a kid. Maybe not even then. I have been grieving every moment since. I tried to call her family, but their contacts were gone from my phone, along with her pictures. Even the ultrasound image framed on my desk at work was gone. I can't even have a funeral for them. There's nothing to bury and no one to mourn. So I'm eulogizing them. Sistine was the love of my life, and I have not experienced joy since she left. I would give anything to have the life we were supposed to have. One with the two of us and our baby. I still wear the ring, and I don't plan on taking it off. I told my wife I'd pick her in every life. She said I already have, and she makes sure I do each time. She was a prankster, and so I assumed she was just being silly. Yeah, why wouldn't you? I'm a great husband, I said, laughing off the joke. I'm not joking, actually. Usually I like to wait until you're closer to the end to tell you, but you'll be gone soon enough. I told you to schedule that doctor's appointment. Yeah, okay, Vera. Whatever you say. I was barely unsettled. She was a weird girl, part of why I liked her. As I started to walk into the bedroom, she grabbed me by the wrist. Sam, I'm not joking. Okay, I'll bite. What are you talking about? I've known you for probably 2,000 years, and most of us pick a person for one lifetime and then switch it up. But you, Sam? You have been so profoundly depressed in each life, it's like I hit the jackpot. The best thing is when you have plenty of hope only for it to be destroyed. I was really looking forward to this time, but you were stupid and waited for the doctor's appointment. You only had a few weeks anyways. But now I'm going to miss out on the hope being crushed once the doctor realizes there's nothing they can do. She didn't laugh. She didn't smirk. She was dead-eyed. You're not going to scare me into going to a stupid doctor's appointment. I'm 33. I don't have cancer. You foolish humans will do anything to convince yourselves you are immortal. Even the greatest minds on your planet don't live longer than 120 years or so. Why do you think that is? Don't you think after all these years of human evolution, you would have figured this out by now? Don't you think it's strange so many other life forms that are so much less advanced don't experience this? Xenosense, biological immortality, the reptiles have it figured out, but they're a dumbed-down version here. Horrified at the mental break my beloved wife was experiencing, I asked her to go to the emergency room with me so she could be checked out. She agreed. If I told them I had stomach issues and got myself checked, fine. She was nervous about my results, and this is her insane way of trying to get me to go to the doctors before my next physical. I went to the hospital with her. She was released after a few hours. I'm now on palliative care. I am 33 years old, and I have stage 4 colon cancer. Vera, how did you know? Know what? Vera said it indifferently. Her husband of 2 years had a month left, and she didn't seem like she cared at all. In fact, she seemed perturbed by how long it was taking. About my cancer. What is wrong with you? Honey, I already told you. You're never going to understand this, and I've even taken a liking to you. I don't love you, obviously, but I love the sustenance you provide. That's why I pick you every time. I always make sure you get a better deal than the other prisoners. I do a lot for you that you don't even understand. You know, the first time I met you, you were a slave in Rome in 26 BCE, or whatever you call it. I had just started out here and had to find my own food, and for some reason I picked you. I was foolish then. I didn't request for you to be with me again. I had no power anyways. But I also just assumed all slaves at that time experienced the same feeling. Vera, you sound crazy. Yes, and you're ignorant. You humans don't even see or care what you do to animals with your industrial farms. At least we let you walk around and live a life. It's not my fault that you never believe me, but I don't care. I'll wait another 16 to 20 years and I'll be back, feeding off your energy. What I like about you, though, is your naivety. You don't ever believe me, and I've told you the truth each time for hundreds of years. I'm definitely one of the lucky ones. She said it with a sick smile on her face, clearly uncaring of how this was affecting me. I'm not crazy, so I assumed she was still pulling some weird prank, or was going through an episode of psychosis that hadn't been picked up yet. I decided to play along. Alright, Vera. Let's just say this is true. Why would I ever believe something so asinine? Well, I've done this before and you typically die right after. But I do kind of want to speed up this process since I'm getting hungry. Humans think we all feed off the whole earth. That would be nice, and that's not a luxury my species has. It's very much eat or be eaten with us. Before I could say a word, she continued. Think of the known universe to you humans as the United States. The Milky Way is essentially 7 Mile in Detroit. One of the worst places you could find yourself. Well, me and my species are here for at least the next 10,000 years, until we can gain enough energy to move on. The Andromeda is essentially Gary, Indiana. There aren't nice neighborhoods for hundreds of thousands of light years. You see, in this part of the universe that you know, you essentially live in a prison. You deserve to be here, so I can't feel bad. Who knows what you did? All I know is you provide a supreme amount of low, vibrational energy. Unfortunately, my species is very much still second-class citizens. Racism spans the cosmos, believe it or not. Anyways, that's why you and every human being on Earth are here. And you idiots choose to go into the light. Even after I tell you all this, I can guarantee you still will, because you've already done it hundreds of times. I've been your best friend. I've been your daughter. I've been your husband, your father, your wife, your favorite uncle. Each time you listened to me and went into the light. Like a moth to a flame. I would feel worse if you eventually figured it out, but you haven't, and so I continue to feed. Mouth agape, I didn't have words to speak. I still assumed she was having a mental break, but the lore she created was perplexing. Before I could respond, she stopped me with a single wave of her finger, and then she did something unimaginable. Right before me, in my literal deathbed, she transformed. It wasn't as showy as you'd think, and while I have trouble remembering all of it, I need to write this down. She became a being of pure light. Vaguely reptilian and bright green, almost radioactive, and about 7 to 8 feet tall. At the same moment, time seemed to stop. No beeping of the machines keeping me comfortable. No cable TV playing in the background. Nothing. Her eyes weren't eyes. They were voids. Voids of darkness that would make the Vantablack paint look white. It was the most horrifying thing I had ever seen. I could barely hear or understand her when she transformed back to a human, but I will never forget what I saw. After that, she left, as I started to code. A plethora of doctors and nurses rushed in asking for a cart to crash or something. And suddenly I was in total darkness. Not even close to the darkness of her eyes, but dark beyond anything I'd seen on Earth. I saw a distant light, and Vera was there to guide me. "It's okay, Sam. It's time for you to go. Go into the light." I stopped and thought for a moment. Then I told her my decision. "I'm not going, Vera, or whoever you are." She muttered something frustratingly in a language I didn't understand, and I could tell she was transforming into her horrific form again. Suddenly I woke up in my hospital bed. I asked the doctor where my wife was, and he said she hadn't come to visit me yet, still in the psych unit downstairs. Was anything I saw real? Is any of this real? I want to believe it's all in my head. The chemo and dilaudid acting up. Anything to blame mental fallacies before accepting what she said. That's why I had to post this. The longer I think of it, the more I think it was a dream brought on by my fear of death. The only thing that terrifies me is when the nurse came in to change my ice chips. "Looks like you spit up or something in your cup. Did you eat any snakes lately?" she said with a light-hearted laugh. "No, why?" "Well, I'm from Georgia, so it's not uncommon. I've just never seen a snake shed its skin in such a public place up here in New Hampshire." As she pointed the cup towards me, I gasped, because I know there are no bright green snakes in New Hampshire. I had to move to the West Coast about a year ago for work. I'd heard about how awful the situation was with rent and all, but I hadn't given it much thought until I actually had to start looking for apartments. Pardon my language, but it's frickin' ridiculous. My job requires a graduate degree, and the rent alone in some of these places is more than I make in an entire month. Then you factor in food and whatever else, which is also expensive as hell. And the whole thing's messed up. I'd basically resigned myself to a diet of rice and beans. Maybe one chocolate bar a month if I was feeling particularly extravagant. I'm one of those guys that can sleep on airplanes. So if the place I found didn't have enough space for a bed, I was totally fine with just sleeping inside a closet or something. Anyway, point is, I was ready to suffer. And yet, in my moment of desperation, a light appeared in the darkness, a light in the form of a Craigslist ad. I couldn't believe it when I saw it, a listing with a rent of just $200 a month. From the photos, it was clear that the place was far more luxurious than anything else in my price range. There was a bathroom, there was a kitchen, there was even a balcony. You see something like that, your first assumption is that it's a scam. But when you're in a situation like mine, you've got to take any chance you can get. I contacted the person that had posted the listing and told them that I was interested in seeing the place. I also threw in some of my background. Explained that I lived on the other side of the country but was currently in the area searching for an apartment due to work. Basically tried to come off as slightly desperate and also a bit pitiful. I got a response less than a minute later asking if I could come to the apartment for a tour. Naturally, I said yes. There were a lot of people at that apartment building for the same reason as me, so they had this whole system set up with numbered tickets like it was the frickin' DMV. I had to wait for about an hour, but when it was my turn, I was directed into the apartment, which I was greeted by a large man who introduced himself as the landlord. The place looked exactly like the photos, and I had to confirm a few times that the place of rent I'd seen online was the actual, factual rent that I'd be paying. The landlord seemed almost amused by my disbelief. There was, however, a single caveat. He explained, a reason why it was possible to offer such a nice apartment for such an impossibly low price. Microtenancy is what he called it, a new system that they were trying out. Essentially, while I would be the primary occupant of the apartment, it would be possible for other people to pay to rent out smaller portions of the place for a short period of time. If somebody really needed to take a shower, for example, they could pay money to use mine for 30 minutes. With enough of these microtenants, the apartment would make more than enough money to offset the ridiculously low rent. Basically, the whole deal was mutually beneficial. The landlord makes a crap load of money, and I get a cheap apartment as long as I can handle disturbances every once in a while. The whole concept sounded absurd, but I wasn't about to complain. If the landlord thought an arrangement like that would make him more money than just renting out the place normally, well, that wasn't my problem. I told the landlord that his idea was brilliant, and that I was more than happy to share the apartment with others. After recording some of my personal information and asking a few questions, the landlord told me that he'd get in touch if I was selected as the primary tenant. Well, I spent the rest of the day dawdling around, touring other apartments, all of them demanding at least 20 times the money for a quarter of the space I'd get from the place with the micro-tenancy deal. I told myself that, considering the sheer number of applicants, I needed to face reality and accept that I was probably going to have to settle with one of those crappy Chinatown apartments, where the shower head is directly above the toilet. And yet, that very next morning, I received the call I'd been waiting for. The landlord, it seemed, had been particularly impressed when he'd met me. The moment he shook my hand, he knew I'd be the perfect fit for the place, is essentially what he said. And so, I had my apartment, and a month later, I moved in without any hassle. The visitors began to arrive around a week into my lease. They would show up to use my bathroom, take a nap in my bed, work out on the elliptical trainer I'd brought over. It felt strange at first, but the visitors seemed to be getting something out of being in my apartment, so it wasn't too hard to get used to. Still, it always surprised me to come home from work and be greeted by a stranger sitting on my couch. Sometimes I would try to chat them up, but all I'd ever get was a strange look. Like maybe they realized how awkward the whole deal was as well as I did. Those were the normal ones. As the months passed, the number of visitors grew, and for some of them it was difficult to figure out what exactly they were doing in my apartment. People would show up while I was working out and then just stand there watching me. Others brought sketchbooks with them and drew pictures of me while I was eating dinner. I caught one trying to steal my socks. Another walked into the bathroom and started tapping on the glass while I was taking a shower. You get the idea. At times I considered bringing these things up with the landlord, but I was worried that doing so might get me kicked out onto the streets. So I didn't. Ultimately, I reasoned, none of these visitors were doing anything directly harmful. Annoying, sure. Strange, yes. But that was about it. I was sleeping one night, as I tend to do, when I awoke to a strange feeling in my cheeks. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I realized that someone was standing over me and rubbing my face with their hands. I sat up suddenly and the visitor yelped, then began to retreat towards the door. I was still groggy from having woken up less than a minute ago. Plus, I was totally nude, so by the time I managed to get out of bed to chase after them, they were already long gone. Whether or not I locked the door didn't matter, since the visitors always had a key, so I sat in front of the door until sunrise, completely unable to sleep. As soon as I got off work that day, I marched into the landlord's office and explained what had happened the night before. The landlord, for what it's worth, turned bright red and began apologizing to me profusely, saying that what had happened was totally out of line and would never happen again. He even offered to give me a 50% discount on rent for the month, which wasn't that significant considering how little I was already paying, but I suppose $100 is $100. Although the landlord had sounded sincere, something about the whole incident had planted a sort of seed in my mind, a thought I couldn't quite shake. I bought one of those night vision cameras off Amazon, set it up in the corner of my bedroom, and let it run for a few days. When I checked the footage, my suspicions were confirmed. The visitors were there at night too. As I slept, they would enter my room and watch. Nothing more, just stand there and watch, sometimes for hours at a time. I tried to ignore it. I tried to tell myself that whatever these people were doing, it was totally all harmless. Reminded myself that I was paying 200 buckarooskies a month in rent. That night I just laid in bed, pretending to sleep, but in reality I was listening very carefully. Around 2 a.m. I heard it, the door unlocking as the first visitor of the night arrived. I heard them shuffling towards me and then stop. I heard the door again, more shuffling, more and more of them crowding into my room. At some point I finally snapped. Rent be damned. I leapt out of bed and shoved my way over to the door, blocking the way out. When I flipped on the lights, I was greeted by the stares of 10 or so strangers. None of them moved or made a sound. I addressed the crowd with a hearty, "What are you guys doing here?" hoping that I might sound intimidating despite being only 5'9". None of them so much as flinched. It was then that I noticed something peculiar. The face of one of the visitors, who appeared to be a woman in her late 30s, was sagging at the eyes, far more than the face of even a woman that age ought to. It was as if part of her skin had simply come loose from her skull. I quickly scanned the faces of the others, but couldn't see anything off about them. It was only that particular woman. Not thinking too hard about the legal implications, I lunged towards the woman and grabbed her by the cheeks. Seizing the opportunity, the rest of the visitors slipped past me and ran out the door, while the one I had grabbed began to struggle and yell at me in a language that sounded like Italian but probably wasn't. While I haven't touched many women, I could immediately tell something was wrong with this one. Her skin was so loose, and as she tried to escape my mannish grip, I could feel something beneath her skin. Something wiggling. Something inhuman. I pulled then, and the woman's face, no, her entire head came off, and I realized that what I was holding was one of those rubber masks like they used in Point Break, only more realistic. I was stunned, shocked, like a dog that had tried to move out of its bed, and while I was in that state, the woman used the opening to circle around me and escape through the door the rest of her compatriots had used. As she did, I managed to catch a glimpse of what had been under the mask. A great mass of worms where her head should have been, all wet and wiggling and alive. Unsure of how to proceed from there, I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and spent the rest of the night sitting in front of the door, but nobody else appeared after that. The next morning there was a knock on the door, and I would have crapped myself then and there, if said knock hadn't immediately been followed by the landlord's voice announcing his presence. I quickly put on some clothes and then let him in, hopeful that he would explain to me what had just happened a few hours prior. Instead, he handed me an eviction notice. I played dumb, asking what the issue was, and what I could do to resolve it. "You attacked one of the micro-tenants," was his response. Now that I was on the chopping block, I found myself regretting everything I'd done the night before. I told the landlord that the people visiting my apartment weren't actually people, and that something messed up was going on. I thought maybe he would turn the tides a bit in my favor, but the landlord just nodded and smiled at me. Sensing that things weren't looking good, I got on my knees and told the landlord that okay, maybe they weren't human, but that was fine. Now I knew there wasn't anything to be afraid of, so please just let me stay in this apartment. The landlord looked at me with a queer glow in his eyes, possibly cataracts. "That's the issue," he said, more or less. "You know too much, and now that you know, you're going to behave differently, unnaturally. Can't have that." With that, he turned and waddled out of my apartment. As the door closed, he called out to me. "It's a shame. You were quite popular." That was a few days ago. 3 more and I have to be out of here. There haven't been any visitors since that night. And yet when I look out the windows, sometimes I can see people out there, staring in. I swore one of them was wearing a shirt with my face on it. Maybe I'm just imagining things. Anyway, I'm still looking for a new place to live. Had to sell the elliptical trainer, since I might be living in a box under a bridge somewhere for a while. Once I'm gone, I reckon that ad will go up again. If you're lucky, maybe you'll find it. Maybe you'll even become the next tenant. And if you do, play dumb, and remember that they're only there because of you. I'm posting this because I need some help. I've tried everything. Hot water soak, cold water shower, aloe vera. Let me explain. I recently got back from holiday. It was lovely. Great food and brilliant people. Except for getting sunburnt. I was the only ginger in my friendship group. Probably the only ginger on the entire Greek island. But I refused to be left out just because of some sun. I still went to the beach every day with my friends, drinking beers and having a laugh. My friends kept moaning, telling me to put on more sunscreen, but I hadn't flown all that way to hide myself in the shade. It wasn't until I got home I realized how badly I'd burnt. I arrived back somewhat pink and tender, radiating heat. I spent the next couple of days lathering up with aloe vera gel. It must have been 2 days later. I was back at work, back to reality, when I started to peel. It started small, pulling thin patches from my shoulders. They came off with ease. It was like taking the screen protector off a new phone. I was engrossed. Then I pulled the perfect part, from the elbow straight down my forearm and over the back of my hand. I laid it out. I stared at it. It was perfect. My hand was wonderful to peel. I'd find an edge beginning to lift and peel it back delicately. I could see my freckles in it, the tiny grooves of my fingerprints, even the way it would stretch around an old scar. There would be a slight bit of tension before release, revealing a softer, newer flesh underneath. I'd taken to rubbing my feet together before bed, scratching away at an itch that I could never quite get. For some reason, I found this comforting. I would drift off softly, chasing the sensation. One morning, I stood with my back to the shower. I'd neglected the loose skin there that I couldn't reach. The water found an opening on my shoulder and ran beneath the skin. I could feel the warm water spreading between my skin and back. It ballooned out and sagged before it finally split. I stood and watched as skin, wasted, washed down the drain. But when I really think about it, that could have been one of my best pulls. From then on, I would pull the unreachable bits with some kitchen tongs and some good stretching in the mirror. For the itch, I rubbed my back against the doorframe. I thought about stopping when the lock scraped so hard it drew blood. For a moment, the itch disappeared. I went to work until they asked me to stop coming in. At first, I think they were concerned. People had mentioned I was getting thinner. Then concern turned to disgust. I heard people whispering that I smelt rotten. Of course they were exaggerating, a little BO at most. I just hadn't showered properly in a while. People started to wonder why I was at work with a long-sleeve shirt. I told people I was embarrassed by the peeling. Truth is, I knew I wouldn't be able to resist pulling away at it at work. I'd be typing away and small pieces would flake off and land on my desk. I was missing out. I had to sneak to the bathroom and pull a few pieces for myself. It was better than any cigarette break I ever had. It was only a problem if I got a good piece. One time at work, my sock had made an indent around my leg. It made the perfect edge. Slickly, it pulled right up my calf all the way to my knee. I had to sneak it home. I kept it in my lunchbox so it wouldn't get damaged. It's my favorite piece in my collection. It took some of my tattoo with it. It looks beautiful. The layers seemed to get more red, more vibrant as more layers peeled off. With every layer, my tattoos seemed to get brighter, newer. Then parts of them began disappearing with skin I pulled away. Eventually, I had none. A fresh canvas. Then came the harder bits. I started using some tweezers to get in the tight spaces. My knuckles were tougher. They peeled off in callous lumps, but they preserved all the little creases and folds of the joint. I liked those. I peeled far enough down one finger that I finally reached the nail bed. Then I found the edge beneath the nail. Once I had the edge, it peeled off effortlessly. They'd been so itchy. I was never truly worried until I woke up and found my little toe in the corner of my fitted sheet. There was no blood. It had simply come off in the night. I put it in my collection. Honestly, I was unsure what to do with it. I didn't think it was truly collection-worthy. Unlike my big toe, that felt collection-worthy. I didn't have to worry anyway. It wasn't long before I had a full collection. I couldn't help but spend the whole day peeling. It was captivating. More captivating than any work or anything else had ever been. Night started to roll in when my stomach grumbled and woke me from an itching daze. I looked at my hand. I peeled and scratched it completely raw. My eye was caught. I could still see a piece, wedged in the corner of my knuckle. I had a dental utensil, a long thin metal point. When I wasn't scratching the gaps in my teeth, I used it for small, awkward, unrewarding bits like this. This was the first time I made it to the bone. This bit was deeper than others. When I hooked the point beneath it and pulled, there was a resistance, a sharp pinch. For a moment I thought I'd finally gotten it. Then the itch returned. I wasn't as disappointed as I should have been, but it was deeper this time, inside the bone. I'm writing this with my right thumb. It's the only finger that still works on the screen. I'm lying in bed listening to the kirk, kirk, kirk of my feet rubbing together. They don't feel soft anymore, but still it soothed me for a moment. The itch is everywhere now. I can feel it all over me. It's in my bones. I grind my teeth together trying to reach the itch inside them, but it's never enough. My left hand is bone, but it still itches. I stare at it when I drift off. It might be the light, but I swear I can see edges beginning to lift. I don't want to run out. I don't know if this was just an extremely vivid fever dream, a false memory, or something else entirely. I was around 5 or 6 years old. Even after all this time, it's still one of the clearest memories I have from my childhood. I was at a mall with my mother and father. It was a normal day. My mom was shopping while my dad and I followed her around. We were playing and messing around while waiting for her to finish. At some point, I suddenly needed to pee. My dad took me to look for a restroom since my mom was in the middle of shopping. For some reason, we couldn't find one. I remember this wasn't a mall we visited often, so we were kind of lost. Eventually, we ended up in what looked like the basement level of the mall. I should probably mention that this mall was really old even back then. It's been demolished for years now. That area was dimly lit and felt completely different from the rest of the mall. One side looked like a parking area, while the other seemed to be where delivery trucks brought supplies into the building. We weren't actually outside, but we were near the entrance to that area. There was a security guard standing there, so my dad asked if there was a restroom nearby. The guard pointed towards a restroom sign farther down the basement area. At that point, I was desperate, so we didn't really have much choice. My dad let me go in by myself while he waited outside the entrance. I remember the restroom being pretty dark, but honestly, I didn't care. All I wanted to do was pee. After I finished and came out of the stall, I noticed a woman washing her hands at one of the sinks. She had long hair and was wearing what looked like a Sunday dress. I wasn't planning on washing my hands. I was a little kid and figured nobody would know anyway. But since she was there, I felt like I should. I noticed there was a lower sink that was just the right height for me, so I went over to it. I wasn't really paying attention to the woman, but I remember feeling like she was looking at me, not just glancing at me, actually staring. For some reason, I didn't want to look directly at her. Looking back, I think I was already scared. The restroom was dark, I was alone, and there was a stranger standing there with me. I remember wishing I had let my dad come inside with me. He had offered to guide me to a stall, but I insisted I could do it myself and told him to wait outside. The longer I stayed there, the more uncomfortable I felt. I can't explain it very well, but it felt like she was getting closer. I never turned around to check. I just remember suddenly wanting to get out of there as fast as possible. The second I finished washing my hands, I ran. I practically sprinted out of the restroom. When I saw my dad was waiting outside, I felt so relieved. I immediately ran up to him and told him we should go back. He picked me up, and as we were walking away, I happened to look back toward the restroom. The woman was standing near the entrance, just staring at us. I don't remember her moving. I just remember her watching. Once we got back to the main part of the mall and found my mom, I finally relaxed. The rest of the day was completely normal. Eventually, I forgot all about the woman. At least until later that night. When we got home, I became sick with a fever. I remember lying in bed feeling hot and exhausted before eventually falling asleep. Then I found myself somewhere else. The best way I can describe it is that I was inside a room made of flesh. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's exactly what it looked like. The walls moved around me like I was inside a womb again. Everything seemed to pulse and squirm. It felt like I was sitting inside somebody's intestines. Naturally, I started freaking out. I remember crying and trying to get out. The whole room felt disgusting. It was warm, wet, and alive somehow. What scared me most was that I was completely alone and had no idea where I was. I remember crying so much I blacked out. When I woke up, I could see trees. I found myself in a forest, then I saw people nearby. There were 4 people wearing black robes, and around 10 to 15 people tied together in a line. At first, I thought they were prisoners. Then I got a better look. They looked tortured. Some were crying, some were barely standing. I quickly hid near the side of the cave where I could still see them without being noticed. That's when I saw her. The woman from the restroom. She was standing with them. The people who were tied up had strange symbols carved into their skin. They looked like they had been cut there with knives. Honestly, describing them as beaten or tortured doesn't really do them justice. Some looked like they were degloved. Some appeared amputated. Others were so badly injured that they barely looked human. And the smell. I don't know how I could smell something in a dream, but I could. It was awful. The most putrid even till now. I haven't smelled anything worse. I have no idea why I stayed there watching. Maybe because I recognized the woman, or maybe because I was too terrified to move. The 2 robed figures at the front of the line seemed to be searching for something around the cave. The other 2 stayed behind the people who were tied up. The cave itself wasn't some huge opening. It was the kind of cave where you wonder why cave divers would willingly crawl inside. Then the woman looked directly at me. At first, I didn't recognize her. She looked different somehow. If it wasn't for her long hair and those hollow eyes, I wouldn't have recognized it was the same woman from the restroom. Then we made eye contact and she pointed at me. The robed figures immediately turned in my direction. Later, I realized something strange about that moment. She never said a word. Nothing was covering her mouth, yet she never spoke. She only ever pointed. The robed figures started moving toward me. I could barely see their faces as they dragged me away. I could sense confusion from them, but they tied me up anyway. I found myself at the back of the line, tied by the neck just like the others. I remember crying my eyes out because I didn't really want to go back into that cave. I pleaded and pleaded, telling them I wasn't supposed to be there, but it was no use. I was stuck in that line while the two robed figures continued searching for something. Eventually, they found it. A small wooden door, heavily chained shut. The door slowly opened as they pried the chains away. As soon as it opened, the line began moving. One by one, the people dropped onto all fours and started crawling through the small opening. Earlier, I described how putrid the people smelled, but the stench coming from that opening was somehow even worse. It smelled like every rotten thing imaginable had been mixed with feces and packed inside that cave. The smell was so overwhelming that even now, over 20 years later, I can still remember it. The line slowly moved forward, closer and closer to the opening, and just before it was my turn to enter, everything went black. The next thing I remember was waking up in a hospital bed with my parents sitting beside me. I later found out that I had been unconscious for 3 days because of dengue fever. After that incident, life went on. Every now and then, though, I would remember that dream and end up feeling sick to my stomach. Sometimes I would even throw up. Nonetheless, I grew up like any other kid, but I wouldn't deny that it did mess me up. I never mentioned any of these to anyone, even my parents. I buried this deep into my memories, then eventually fulfilled my dream and became a doctor. For years, I convinced myself it was nothing more than a fever dream. Maybe it was a weird lucid dream. You know those weird dreams you have when you have a fever? I don't know how could a child that age even come up with those concepts. But I long forgotten it. But then something happened recently. I saw her. I saw that woman. She looked exactly the same as the time I saw her. She was my patient. She was rushed into the ER covered in severe injuries, with those same strange symbols carved into her skin. There she was, lying on my table. I tried to save her. I really did. But the trauma was simply too extensive. Her body gave out before we could stabilize her. I wanted to ask her so many questions, just to make any sense about it. She had multiple fractures, extensive soft tissue injuries, and signs of prolonged abuse. Some of her injuries were unlike anything I'd ever seen in my career. One detail in particular still messes with my head, but I don't feel comfortable describing it. She had been found in a public place and brought to our hospital. The fact that she arrived alive at all was a miracle. She was admitted as a Jane Doe. No identification, no wallet, no phone, nothing. The police took over the investigation almost immediately. I wasn't supposed to know anything beyond what was necessary for treatment. Every time I tried asking questions, I got the same answer. It's being handled. But that only made it worse. I haven't slept properly since. I can't get her out of my head. I don't even know where to begin. I don't want to think about it, but the questions keep coming. I can barely bring myself to go to work anymore. And now I can't stop thinking about it. About the dream, about the cave, those symbols, about her. And about the fact that she looked exactly the same as she did 20 years ago. Am I going to end up like her? I wish I could forget it all. It doesn't even make sense. I sound crazy. Maybe I am, who knows, but I don't care anymore. I just want to get this off my chest. I'm now seeing a psychiatrist. The fear and anxiety is slowly killing me. I don't know if I ever want to dig deeper into this. My head hurts just writing this. I had altered and didn't mention some information that would better explain why I'm freaking out about Jane Doe for privacy reasons, especially since she was still a patient. May she rest in peace. I don't know what to do. I'm freaking out. Just earlier today I was playing video games after a draining day of work, reminiscing on how comfortable I was on my vacation, and wishing that comfort would have lingered a little while longer. Now I'm in my car in an abandoned parking lot waiting for the cops to show up. Let me start off by saying me, Sam, and my friend, Gerald, are close. Our mothers were childhood friends, so naturally this closeness was passed down a generation. He doesn't keep any secrets from me, and vice versa. So as soon as my vacation was over, and it was close for his week, and a half stay at the luxury hotel resort to begin, he didn't mind letting me know that the workplace won't be missed while he's gone. He left for the airport today and should have already landed, if not close to the end of his 10-hour flight. He sent a message to me this morning talking about how beautiful the view was going to be. Here was how the morning messages played out. Hey bro, we're about to head on to the plane soon. I'll send you pics when we land so I can rub the view in your face while you are deep in paperwork. LMAO. I'll keep that in mind when I plan a trip to Tokyo. By myself. I'll make sure to send you a pic of some nice ramen stew. Yum. I see how it is. But next year, let's plan our vacation together. Yeah, if they let us. You know they need at least one of us there to keep the building up afloat. You're so right. It gets tiring carrying everyone on our backs, huh? LMAO, you already know. Okay, they're calling our numbers now. I'll text you when we land. Talk to you later. Got you. Don't forget to send pics. Up until that point, I hadn't gotten any messages back. So imagine my surprise when I got a knock on my door at 8 p.m. and when I looked through the peephole to see Gerald. His hair was messy and growing into different directions. He had dirt on his face and his clothes looked like a messier version of an outfit he wore 2 years ago. The only reason I remember the exact outfit was because I bought him the outfit and he only wore it once. I took a picture of him in it that day. I said hello, to only get a frantic, "Let me in, bro. I need help. I can't believe this just happened to me." Aren't you supposed to be on vacation right now? What happened? What? My vacation isn't for another few months. What are you talking about? Let me in. He yelled through a hoarse voice as if he overused his vocal cords and could no longer continue to do so. It looked like him, down to the annoyed mannerisms. And I know this was dumb on my part, but I had unlocked the door to let him in. I had no reason to assume he was anyone else, and just thought he might have been in an accident and become disoriented. He frantically ran to the living room and paced around. He was biting his nails like he usually does under immense stress. "What happened to you, bro? You good?" I asked in a concerned tone, trying not to overreact. "Dude, you remember when I said I was going to go hiking in the woods near B Road? I ended up getting really lost there for like 7 hours. My phone died and I was freaking out." I had remembered him hiking quite a few times. He started up the hobby a few years ago, and he's managed to do so up until this point, but something wasn't adding up. He went hiking yesterday. Why would he be at my house now if he already said he was at the airport? Bro, did you hit your head on a rock coming back down from the forest trails? You texted me earlier this morning about getting on the plane. What? No, I didn't. My phone is dead, remember? I told you it died while I was lost. There's no way I could have texted you. Here's the messages, dude, if you don't believe me. I then went back to our messages and shoved the phone into his face. He scrolled and scrolled and scrolled, a hint of confusion growing with each thumb flick. Dude, who is this? It's you, dummy. Do you not see the contact number? This isn't me. This isn't even my number. Bro, yes it is. Are you joking? You can quit now. I have to be at work at 6 a.m. I'm not joking. This isn't me. At all. I was getting steadily frustrated with his constant lying, so I went to our picture tab and started scrolling. See, this is you. His face of confusion turned into horror. Who the hell is this? Pushing my breaking point, I snatched the phone away from him and showed him a picture of me and him a couple weeks ago. This is you. Why are you so committed to the bit, bro? Give it up. While I was scrolling to look for more evidence of me and him together, I seen a message bubble pop up and my heart sunk. Hey bro, sorry my flight got delayed, but look at this view. Hot babes, here I come. There was an attachment of him with his luggage, and the view was indeed beautiful, but now I didn't have any explanation for this. and I looked back up at the other Gerald in front of me. He looked at me with so much confusion, like something was on his mind, but he didn't know how to express it. Sammy, I don't know who that person is, but that isn't me. I looked up at him in horror. Gerald hasn't called me that in 2 years. It was weird hearing him say that again. I looked back at the photo that was just sent and looked back up to see if I could find any difference. Outside of the obvious dirt and hair maintenance issues, he looked completely normal, just like him. So much like him, in fact, it got creepy. What? Did that person text you again? Let me see. I jolted back from him instinctively. This Gerald in front of me looked visibly shocked, then offended at the sudden reaction. Dude, that person is obviously impersonating me. Give me the phone so I can give him a piece of my mind. He said as he reached his hand out to take the phone from me. I then stepped back again, but this time with a few more steps. He was in disbelief. He looked like I betrayed him. This is irritating me. Why are you being so scary? It's me, look. He yelled, visibly getting more aggressive. Out of the corner of my eye, I seen my car keys and made a mental note of it. My bad, my bad. I said as I relaxed my body. I thought you were pulling a trick on me, but now I think this dude is just a scammer. I said, forcing out a chuckle to ease the dense tension between us. Gerald seemed to relax as well and chuckled a little too. Thank goodness. For a second it seemed like you were scared of me. We both chuckled a bit before dialing down to make it seem less awkward. I'm gonna go to my car and get a kit so you can clean up those wounds on your legs, bro. I said as I grabbed my keys and headed for my car. Well, inside my car, I immediately started up the ignition. This must have alerted the other Gerald because he then ran to the entrance of the door and stared at me. His face creased in confusion, then realization as I sped off. I only faintly saw as the light from behind him made him look like some shadow figure. I then sped dialed the real Gerald and waited impatiently as the phone rang. Come on, answer, I said as I was hearing the familiar ringing sound from the phone. The number you have dialed is not available at this time. I yelled as I slammed the phone on the steering wheel. I then texted him and said, Bro, answer me back when you can. Someone at my house is claiming to be you, but that's not possible. I pressed send, then sat there contemplating on what does one do after experiencing this. I kept replaying the event in my head over and over until I realized something. Remember when I went to the trail by B Road earlier? That sentence replayed in my head. I thought he said he wasn't stepping foot back into that trail again because of all the unnecessary cuts he got from walking the partially developed trail. I looked up B Road in the messages and sure enough, the message from 2 years ago popped up of him saying he wouldn't go back there again. But that wasn't all that showed up. Another message was above it too. This was also around the time he changed his number. He said because he lost his old phone and didn't feel the need to swap numbers over. I then tracked down his old phone number and sure enough, the last picture I sent to him on that number was a picture of him and I together. Me in casual attire and him in the outfit I gave him that day, that he wore for the first and last time. I ended up getting another message bubble popping up from Gerald. What? I'm all the way on vacation, dude. Get out the house. A thought came into my head and I ended up typing this out before I could even process what I was doing. JK, I'm joking, LOL. LMAO, scared me for a second. Good thing you're safe. Oh, but anyways, dude, I had a question to ask you. My fingers hovered over the phone as I was prepared to type this out, but I needed to test my theory. So you remember that time we went to that club out in Seaville, and I got drunk and puked everywhere a few months ago, right? Of course, I had to clean you up. Never drink like that again. I won't, don't worry. Also, dude, I'm making banana bread in 2 weeks. You down to eat it with me? You think I'ma pass up my favorite homemade banana bread? Hell yeah. You always make the best. Cool. I'll let you know when I go to buy the ingredients. Make sure to send more pics. You already know, bro. I immediately dialed 911 and told them someone has stolen my friend's identity and has been for 2 years. And I know you guys are wondering, how the hell did you come to that conclusion? Well, for one, I have never in my life made banana bread, and two, he's allergic. Has been since we were teens. He's never ate anything with bread in it since. So if the Gerald that came from the woods is the real Gerald, then why has the real Gerald been convinced he's only been gone for 7 hours? And who have I been friends with for the past 2 years? There's a door in my house that's only in the mirror. I know how that sounds, but it's the truth, and it's exactly how it sounds. It started a few days ago, on an otherwise unremarkable Saturday morning, where I was attempting to nurse a headache caused by my fantastic decision-making at a local dive bar. Being in a new city is nerve-wracking enough for one as socially inept as me, so when some coworkers suggested drinks, I thought it was a perfect opportunity to make some new friends with the help of a little liquid courage. Turns out these new friends had a penchant for tequila shots, which leads to a little too much to drink, resulting in a pretty gnarly hangover. Needless to say, it took more than a few minutes to finally peel myself out of bed. I dragged myself down the hallway to the bathroom, rubbing my temples and mentally cursing myself for not having the gall to muster a simple no. The light seemed to assault my eyes, and the blur added a double vision effect to my surroundings, which made it almost reasonable to write off what I saw in the bathroom mirror behind me as my addled brain, misinterpreting reality. Almost. Behind me in the bathroom mirror was a door. I blinked, shook my head, and leaned over the sink, turning on the water before splashing my face to wake up a bit. I sighed, hoping the fatigue would alleviate a bit, and opened my eyes. The door was still there. I stared, completely puzzled. The door obviously was not there before, and did not at all fit the architectural flow of the rest of my house. It looked like an old basement door, chipped around the frame and worn down by age and a less than cleanliness conscious homeowner. Only instead of being situated inside a creepy old farmhouse, it was in my second-story apartment. I turned and looked over my shoulder, only to find no door, just the wall. Confused, the concern for my hangover taking a backseat to concern of possible hallucinations, I turned back to the mirror, to be greeted once again by the door. "What the hell?" I muttered, swinging my gaze back and forth from wall to mirror, trying to figure out how that could be at all possible. I looked closer at the image of the door in the mirror. Before getting an idea, I took out my phone and snapped a picture of the wall, before snapping a subsequent picture of the mirror. I maneuvered to my photo album, not sure if I wanted to see the door in the mirror or not. Sure enough, there it was in all its rustic glory, placed exactly where it shouldn't be. Without knowing what else to do, I simply went about my day. It sounds silly to ignore something like that, I know, but you have to consider telling someone about the door without being able to show them would make me sound insane, and I didn't exactly have anyone in the city I would consider myself close enough with to shoot a random morning invite to my place. Besides, what exactly is there to do about it? So I simply went on about my business. The door somehow slipping towards the back of my mind as I ran my errands, and tried to erase the embarrassment I had about my antics from the night prior. It continued like that for a few days, with the door becoming part of the background scenery, just an oddity I couldn't explain. Until on Thursday morning, the door was open. It wasn't noticeable, at least at first. It wasn't like someone had swung the thing open and rudely left it that way, just slightly ajar. I only noticed because I was fixating slightly longer than normal on my appearance due to a lack of cooperation from my hair. As I brushed, my eyes drifted to the door and there it stood, cracked barely enough to notice. like a draft had caught it. I froze instantly, feeling my heart drop down to my stomach. For a long while I just stood there, staring, halfway expecting it to shut suddenly. Nothing happened, and I wasn't sure whether to be more or less uneasy. At this point, I wasn't comfortable not telling anyone about it anymore. The door opening suddenly added a weight to the situation that took it from something that was admittedly extremely odd to alarming. It was all I could think about on the way to work, and as I clocked in, I thought about how I could bring it up without sounding like a lunatic. Finally, at my lunch break, I mustered up the courage to say something to Elise, a girl I worked with on Thursdays. Have you ever had something happen that you don't know how to explain without sounding completely insane? I asked bluntly, feeling my cheeks getting a little red as I realized how cliché sounding that came out. Elise tilted her head slightly, a puzzled but inquisitive look crossing her face before giving way to a grin. What, like a ghost story? Or maybe a mystery? Ooh, I like that. She cooed, giggling a bit. I'm serious though, Elise. I really don't want to sound crazy, but there's something seriously weird happening at my apartment. I tried to convey seriousness through my eyes as well as I knew how. Elise sat forward a bit now seeming to be some combination of amused and bemused. Alright, let's hear it. I'm not gonna have to report you or anything, am I? She laughed, but I couldn't tell if she was completely joking. No, nothing like that. Just, well, there's not a real way to introduce the subject subtly, so I'll just say it. There's a door in my bathroom that only shows up in the mirror. Elise just stared at me for a moment, seeming to ponder that. What? What does that mean exactly? Her slightly confused but also concerned expression made me less confident, but I doubled down. There is a door in the bathroom mirror. In the sense I only see it in the mirror. When I turn and look, it isn't there. It only shows in the mirror. Elise squinted a bit and tilted her head once again. So, like, the opposite of a vampire? You know how they don't show up in the mirror? I chuckled a bit at that before I continued. Yeah, I guess like a reverse vampire situation. Really though, I mean, what do I make of that? Am I just nuts? I rubbed my hands a bit before making myself quit. Nervous tick. Elise again thought for a moment, pursing her lips and dramatically taking a deep breath before she finally answered. I don't know, Darren. I don't think you're nuts. Maybe you're just stressed. I mean, you aren't on, well, drugs, are you? She looked nervous to ask that last bit, but held her gaze at me. No, I mean, Friday night with you guys was the first time I'd even drank in months. Maybe you're right. I mean, there's not exactly a logical explanation other than hallucination, right? Sorry, I shouldn't have brought it up. My nerves were getting the best of me. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, exhaled, then continued. I'm sorry, really, but I just had to tell somebody. Felt like a weight bearing on me. There's one more thing, though. I watched for her reaction and she just stared intently. She seemed to actually be listening to me, which made me feel a bit better. The door had been closed, but this morning it was open. Just like, slightly ajar, but still open. Elise stared for another minute before blinking and raising her brows. Wow, okay, that's creepy. She looked at her phone and I realized it was probably almost the end of our lunch. We gotta go back, but if you're serious, just text me if you need anything, okay? She gave me a small smile that didn't entirely hide her concern, but it made me feel good that she didn't think I was absolutely insane. Or at least if she did, she hid it well enough. Yeah, will do. Thanks, Elise. I set my keys down on the counter and sighed, closing my eyes and rubbing my temples. The last shift of the week really took it out of me, but the stress of the day added on top of everything with the door situation made me ready to go straight to bed. I didn't care about anything besides sleep, and at this point, I wanted to not worry about the door. I struggled to pick up my feet on the way to the bedroom, staggering into my room before collapsing on my bed and falling asleep right as my head hit the pillow. I rubbed my eyes, suddenly aware of my bladder on the verge of bursting. I looked down at the alarm clock on my dresser. It read 1:34 a.m. I groaned, forcing myself out of bed before remembering the situation in the bathroom. Just real quick, in and out. I muttered as I opened my bedroom door and stared down the hallway. The bathroom door on the left in the hallway felt much more ominous than it had previously, a looming presence that instilled a bit more dread than I cared to admit. As I approached, I realized I was holding my breath. I exhaled, standing before the bathroom door, mentally preparing myself for something from a horror movie. I braced and swung the door open, flipping the light switch all in one fluid motion. The door was exactly the same as where I left it that morning. I breathed a sigh of relief. While I was still obviously very concerned about the door being open, at least there wasn't a demon or some other ghastly apparition in the door waiting for me. I maneuvered to the toilet and relieved myself before heading to the sink. I kept flicking my gaze between my hands as I washed them, and the door. Shutting the water off, I sighed, the weight of worry from earlier in the night returning. I slouched over the sink. I hated how I felt alone in this city. And, as if that wasn't enough, I couldn't even come to peace. I felt fear in my own home. There is just no point in stressing myself out anymore over this. I said out loud to myself. I stared at myself in the mirror, assessing my weary appearance. Sleep hadn't been my strong suit even before the stress of recent events, so my eye bags were a bit more prominent than I would like. I grunted. Some rest for once would do me good. I muttered, straightening my posture and trying to put my worries away. I took one last glance towards the doorway before leaving the bathroom. There was an eye in the crack of the door. For a moment, it felt like time froze completely. I couldn't feel the rabid beat of my heart, or my shallow and shaky breathing, or trembling of my hands. I could only feel the cold, inhuman gaze of something beyond comprehension from beyond the door. The eye was shaded, and it was difficult to make out the details, but the pupils seemed to be ovular in shape, with no iris. There was an unnerving intelligence behind its gaze that made me feel like I was looking at something that was thinking, something that was observing. Observing me. I finally managed to break out of my trance, spinning around and sprinting out of the bathroom at speeds I hadn't reached in years. I tore through my apartment in a panic, blowing out of my front door like a whirlwind. I didn't care that I was in my boxers and an old t-shirt, or that it was 40 degrees and almost 2 in the morning. I cared about putting distance between myself and that thing in the mirror. My mind was racing with possibilities. Could it leave wherever it was? Could it physically reach me at all? If it could, then what did it want? I got to the police station quickly on foot. Not all too surprising considering it was 5 blocks away. I almost got arrested myself. Bursting through the front doors in a panic, the deputy manning the front desk jumped up, eyeing me up and down in a defensive stance, sporting an understandably bewildered expression. "Sir, are you okay? What's going on here?" He had his hand hovering over his holster, which made me nervous and aware of my need to explain myself. "I think there's someone in my apartment. I saw an eye through a crack in the door. I live alone and I ran straight out as soon as I saw it." I frantically explained the situation, leaving out the details that would likely grant me a one-way ticket to a 2-week gateway in the psych ward. The deputy stared attentively and nodded. "I understand, sir. We'll get some people there immediately." With that, he got on his radio, and we prepared to go back to my apartment. My nerves were overtaking me at that point, and I was relentlessly picking at my hands. I rode in the cruiser with the deputy, with another officer trailing. Besides a few more questions from him about the situation, it was a silent car ride, which added to the ominous aura of the situation. As we approached, I could see my apartment building, and the knot growing in my chest tightened. I couldn't decide if I was more afraid of them finding something, or nothing. Both prospects terrified me in their own unique way. As we pulled in the parking lot, the stillness of everything unnerved me. The peaceful night air betrayed the suspense of the situation in a way that made the tension palpable. The deputy turned to look back at his partner's squad car, before turning back, steeling himself and facing me. "Stay here, sir. We'll go sweep your apartment and check around the perimeter. Don't worry, you won't be alone." He gestured to the other officer that had just pulled in, totaling at 3 now. I just nodded, too preoccupied with my thoughts to offer much of a response. With that, he exited the vehicle, and he and the other officer going in stepped towards the building. Something about the ambiguity of the situation must have had him spooked, as I noticed his shoulders rise and fall in slow, deliberate motion, as if he was forcing deep breaths. They walked to the stairs that led to the second story of the building and began their ascent, careful to monitor their surroundings. I watched intently as they reached the door to my apartment, where I watched as they entered carefully, immediately sweeping through the doorway and being swallowed by the darkness. The minutes ticked by dreadfully until finally the officers emerged. Their body language was odd, and I could immediately tell something was wrong. As they descended the stairs and moved closer, I could see their wide eyes and paled faces. If they were trying to maintain normalcy, their expressions betrayed them brutally. They approached and just stood for a moment, looking at each other before the deputy from earlier finally turned to me and found his voice. "Sir, are you aware of the, circumstances of the bathroom in your apartment building?" My heart dropped a bit. Some part of me still clung to the hope that this really was some sort of stress-induced hallucination, but those hopes were swiftly crushed by his words. If you mean the door, then, yeah." I trailed off, not knowing what else to say. The third officer that had stayed outside with me finally spoke. "What the hell are you talking about? What do you mean circumstances of the bathroom?" He looked between us, squinting and shaking his head as if to motion for an explanation. Nobody really had one. The deputy spoke again. "Just come take a look at this." He turned to me now, his face wearing a worry that almost seemed to match mine. "You too." I felt like I was in a dream as we stomped up the stairs to my apartment. The open door a looming invitation to some unknown nightmare that awaited us. My heart only seemed to beat harder as we navigated through the maw that was the entrance, and I could feel myself tremble and my teeth clatter a bit as we slowly marched towards the direction of the bathroom. They asked me questions, like how long this had been going on, if there had been any other anomalies, and if I had been making up the story to get them here, or if that was the door that I saw the eye. However, as they opened the bathroom door, I lost my ability to speak completely, and the rapid breathing of my heart seemed to stop all at once. Their voices drowned out, as I could only focus on one thing. The door was wide open.